And we are back with the fifth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fifth segment, we're going to talk about some basketball news that's going on around in the NBA. And one of the biggest news is that I'm actually very surprised that I'm even talking about is now there's betting odds. Like, you can now bet on which NBA coach you think is going to get fired first, which is, I think that's the first time that they've ever had that odd in any of these betting sites. And I got this from SBE Hoops on Instagram. So if you guys are interested in that, if you guys really like basketball, I recommend following that. Following that user. They post a lot of news and, geez, excuse me, but there's a list of these coaches that are, and their betting odds on who, on the most likely coach that is going to get fired. So, or get fired first, I should say. So the right now at plus 400, the odds of getting fired are Billy Donovan, the head coach for the Chicago Bulls. And a lot of, I'm assuming, like, a lot of execs and a lot of people are predicting that he's going to be the first one to get fired. And I'm surprised that he's the first one. Actually, no, I'm not really that surprised. The Bulls, they've been mediocre with a roster that they thought was going to be a contending roster, but ultimately ended up fizzling out to be a mediocre mid-tier team. And Billy Donovan, I mean, not really that good of a resume that he's got. And I guess I'm not that surprised with him being one of the first coaches that are in consideration for getting fired. I'm actually more surprised that Doc Rivers isn't number one on this list because, I mean, you guys know how I feel about Doc Rivers. I think his coaching is just bad. And he's riding that one championship that he won with the Celtics as the big reason for his coaching resume. I'm sorry, but like Doc Rivers, his adjustments are awful, his rotations are awful, his play calling is awful, and his timeout usage is also awful. Like, just not a good coach in my opinion. And he has 900 odds in being the first coach that fires. There's actually three more coaches aside from Billy Donovan that are ahead of Doc Rivers in getting fired. So Quinn Snyder for the Atlanta Hawks has a plus 700 odds in getting fired. And Chauncey Billups for the Portland Trailblazers has 600 odds for getting fired. And then Willie Green for the Pelicans ends up having 500 odds for getting fired. So all of those teams that I just mentioned are relatively, aside from the Blazers, they're mid-tier teams. And they have a roster that should be a good enough roster to contend in the playoffs, but ultimately they're just mid-tier. And whether it's the coaching that's holding them back, whether it's the mediocre players holding them back, that's a completely different story, and we'll have to see how it fizzles out. Now, Taylor Jenkins for the Grizzlies has 1,000 betting odds in getting fired. I don't really expect the coach for the Grizzlies to get fired this season. I think that they're going to have a very smooth season. I think that Zach Edey could be a good candidate for winning Rookie of the Year. And since they're going to have Ja Morant, hopefully, for a majority of the season, I think they're going to get back to being that winning team that we've seen Memphis be with Ja Morant under center. And Duke for PF in the chat, yo, was good. Nothing much, just going over some basketball news, primarily how the betting odds are shaping up and who or what the betting sites think is going to be the first coach to end up getting fired. And I said it was Billy Donovan if you were just tuning in. So after Taylor Jenkins with the 1,000 odds, there is Will Hardy for the Utah Jazz, who ends up getting 1,200 odds, for getting fired. He's the coach for the Utah Jazz. Again, another mediocre team. And Mike Brown also on the hot seat for getting fired, at least according to these odds. And I don't really think Mike Brown is going to get fired this season. I don't know. I just don't think that's going to happen. And then directly below him are Michael Malone and Tyronn Lue. Again, I don't see Michael Malone getting fired, and I don't see Tyronn Lue getting fired at all this season. Tyronn Lue did take the Clippers to the only Western, well, he didn't take them, but he led the Clippers without Kawhi Leonard to the only Western Conference Finals appearance that the Clippers have ever seen. So I don't think they're going to be quick to firing Tyronn Lue this season. And not only that, Michael Malone, while he, while with Nikola Jokic, they have been unable to beat a team that has 50-plus wins in the postseason. I don't think this will be the season that they ultimately decide to just cut ties with Michael Malone. I think that both Tyronn Lue and Michael Malone's jobs are well secured. So those are the betting odds. Some other news that's been circulating around the NBA is that Lonzo Ball could be expected to return really close in this in the preseason. Now they're expecting to play him in a preseason game. Which preseason game he's going to play in is unknown still, but he is making a return to the Chicago Bulls and their lineup. And Lonzo Ball, I mean, I was a huge fan of him in college. Like him when he was playing in UCLA was absolutely fantastic. One of the best point guards that I've seen in college, despite the fact that he had this relatively funky jump shot. I thought he was going to be a very big talent in the NBA. Turns out his first few seasons with the Lakers were rather bust, but he slowly was able to find his way. And like when he was on the Pelicans after that trade with the Lakers, he developed into a very, very solid three-point shooter while still having the court vision and still having the defense needed at the point guard. Like he is a very solid defender at the point guard given his height as well. He is 6'7" after all, or 6'6". I forget exactly how tall he is, but he is a very tall guard. And him with the defense combined with his vision and his on the court, and now combined with his three-point shooting, that's a very solid point guard. And a lot of people and a lot of fans are very, very proud that Lonzo Ball has developed into a three-point shooter. Unlike certain guards that just refuse to fix anything and refuse to work on their jump shot, Ben Simmons, Lonzo Ball, he took the criticism like a man, and he changed his jump shot from what it was in college. You guys know that he shot the ball like this for some reason, practically blocking his face from even looking at the basket. Now he has like a relatively respectable shooting form, and because of that, he increased his three-point percentage from his rookie season to where it was, I think, maybe 32, maybe 37%, to around a 40% three-point shooter, which is staggering. Like, that is incredible improvement from Lonzo Ball. And he is literally proof that anyone can develop a jump shot if they work hard enough and they practice enough and they want to improve. So I don't want no excuse for Ben Simmons not being able to shoot. There is proof that you can develop a jump shot. There is proof. We have the coaches that can do that now. We have the coaches that know what they need to do. He just doesn't do it. So, no. No. Enough of the Ben Simmons slander. Excuse me for that. I cannot stand Ben Simmons and the lack of wanting to improve. But aside from that, some other news regarding basketball. The Kings seem to be looking to want to trade Jaden McDaniels to the Spurs in a move that is considered a salary dump. Now, what does that mean? It just means that they're trying to get rid of the player in order to increase their cap space for whatever it is that they want to do in the season. Now, it's just a regular salary dump. So they're going to ship Jaden McDaniels and his expiring $4.7 million contract to the Spurs. That's the look that what's going to happen. It seems like that's what's going to happen. And then the Spurs, they're only going to add McDaniels on their roster temporarily, as reports indicate that San Antonio plans on waiving him shortly after the trade becomes official. So his contract is going to count as dead money for their cap for the rest of the 2024-2025 season. It's also a very strategic play for the Spurs, who are likely going to be more focused on second-round pick, acquiring another asset to work with as they continue to rebuild and repurpose. And I mean, having Chris Paul to try and build up Victor Wembanyama to the center that a lot of people know that he's going to be is a very solid start for the Spurs. So those are all of the NBA news that I have set up, and let me know in the comments which coach you guys think is going to get fired first. But that's all that I have for this segment. Thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, So remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And as usual, we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show. And if you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box and you can send in your comments and donations that way. And it's guaranteed to get featured on the next show for any of you guys who are interested in doing that. And if Super Chat's not really your thing, that's totally fine. You could always use the link displayed below the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net, and you could send in your comments and or donations that way. Either or really helps the show. And thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna